Good morning, and a hearty welcome to Williams. I was thinking as I woke up this morning that this is the first time since October 2019 that we've been able to warmly welcome families back to campus, and we're so glad to have you with us today. I'm Rob White. I'm the Director of Parent and Family Programs, the man behind the Facebook curtain, and as I tell your students, Dean of your mom and dad. A few quick housekeeping notes. Bathrooms. Today is an outdoor-only event, so most available bathrooms are right there between Bernard Music Center and Hollander Hall. There are also a few bathrooms in the only 2 indoor spaces that are actually open and available today. Sawyer Library right behind me, and the Williams College Museum of Art across Route 2. Right after this presentation, we'll hear from 3 professors about life inside the Williams classroom. And right after that, at 11 o'clock, President Maud Mandel and Dean of the College, Marlene Sandstrom, will share their thoughts and answer your questions at what we're calling the Family Day Assembly. Right after that final morning presentation, lunch will be served until 1:30 under that big tent in front of Presky Center. The lunch buffet actually opens at 11:30. That gives you a 2-hour window, so bide your time and jump in when the lines look shorter. All right. Now, to the business at hand, what happens beyond the Williams classroom. A lot, as it turns out. At least half of Williams education happens when remarkable young people actually learn from each other, which is why we're so happy to have them back here with us on campus this fall. My colleagues this morning will talk about 4 extracurricular opportunities that engage a great many Williams students, often in deeply transformative ways. To my right is Paula Consolini, Director of the Center for Learning in Action. To Paula's right is Director of Athletics Lisa Melendy. To Allie's right is Allie Corey, Associate Director of Inclusive Learning Environments at the Davis Center. And to Allie's right is Kris Hoey, Assistant Director for Student Organizations and Club Sports. Each of them will give brief summaries of the scope of their respective programs, and then we'll leave lots of time for your questions. On the question front, if you have a question, please come up to that microphone right there to ask it. And if getting to the mic presents a challenge, I'll be wandering around with a wireless one and I can bring it to your seat. For those of you who are watching the live stream today, if you have a question to pose to the panelists, just email it to families@williams.edu. families@williams.edu. I'm going to ask Paula Consolini to begin, and please join me in a warm welcome for our panelists. Thanks.
I didn't go up there, right? I should stay here. Okay. Thank you so much for coming, folks, you brave souls who decided to handle the New England fall. As Rob has said, I run the Center for Learning in Action. We're the office on campus responsible for supporting experiential learning and community engagement. We support it both in curricular and extracurricular terms, but I'll share more about what's going on with the extracurricular realm with you now. What's exciting to us is that even though the pandemic raged and forced everyone to be remote, and even now we still have challenges getting back in person, the students have done amazing work, and we've all learned an amazing amount as a result of the work they've been able to do remotely. And our team has been thrilled with the results, as has the members of our community partner group. We run approximately, in good times, we run at least 30 programs. We've had a few less because of the challenges of running them remotely in this last year and a half. But we run programming in the local schools. Something like 350 students have been engaged doing work, either paid work in local schools or volunteer work, in some cases work through the curriculum when they've done some student teaching. Students tutor, they mentor, they serve as recess buddies, and they've, in just this past year, done some amazing work with curriculum development. When we realized that the challenges, the community was, and the school systems were up to the challenges of dealing with, or finally beginning to address in more meaningful ways, the huge gaps in the whitewashing of American social studies, we had a student crew of about 18 students step up to completely remotely rewrite curriculum for the local schools, focused primarily on American history, but some amazing project work that's been done. And one of the items that we've handed out and that's available online, and I'll share it with folks just as an image here, is a coloring book that was created in the summer of 2020 by a student who realized, the book is called Coloring American Heroes, by a student who realized that there were very few African-American heroes known to them, certainly known through public schools, and certainly in American culture. So this student came up with this project, created at the end of the summer of 2020, and then when faculty in the local public schools saw this and realized how valuable it could be, it became the basis for curriculum project work that's now about to be used in the local schools. So you can learn more about that online, but also I can answer questions if you like. So that's just one example of a lot of the amazing work that was done. So we still ran programming, curricular work as along the lines that I mentioned, some remote work supporting local schools. In addition, there was some work creating tutorial videos for the inmates in the local county house of corrections to help them pass their high school equivalency test, because we were not allowed, no one was allowed to go into the local jail system over the course of this period. We're just getting back in there starting in November. So even though all this challenge occurred, the work has continued and the students have amazed us, and we've all learned to do hybrid work now, much more work online as well as work in person. So 30 plus programs getting back up and underway, 50 plus student organizations over the course of on an annual basis, doing work in the community, everything from cultural education through the Williams College Jewish Association running Hanukkah exercises and teaching kids about Hanukkah and teaching them how to play dreidel in the local elementary schools, to work with, as I mentioned, sort of the jail work that has gone on, and then other work, including last year, a totally remote volunteer income tax assistance program where folks train completely remotely and then work completely remotely to actually do taxes for low-income people who would otherwise have struggled significantly or paid a lot of money to get that work done. So this is the kind of programming that we run. We then partner with other offices and programs across the campus to help provide more of that kind of programming. And finally, we connect students directly to community organizations so that they can volunteer directly if that's appropriate. And last year, Lehman Community Engagement ran a completely remote volunteer program where they spread the word out there about the challenges that folks might get help with. Local businesses, local nonprofits, who then signed up for help, and Lehman Community Engagement, our key student organization that organizes folks to do community service, connected folks with those 37 organizations that needed help. And it was everything from websites for a tiny business to data analysis that might need to be done for a particular community organization, nonprofit or otherwise. So all that kind of work went on remotely, and now we're gearing up to do that both in person and remotely. And one of the items that I've shared with you, in addition to sort of the summary sheet that tells you about the different types of work available, and again, there's a wide range here, is just the list, the preliminary list we've got now of opportunities for students to work, the green one, opportunities for students to work over winter study and do engaging work with the community for course credit. There's projects we've already lined up, but students can design their own projects, and that's the last component of what I'll share. The idea that Williams students are capable of coming up with an idea, contacting our office, and getting our support to turn their idea into a reality. So they might say, I have a project that I've done back home. This seems like something that might be done around here. What do you think? And then we identify the potential community partner that might work with them, or the way in which they might fit their idea into the needs to serve the particular needs of a community organization or an institution in this region. We have a large number of nonprofits in the region that belie our beautiful bucolic setting, and students can engage pretty readily, and these organizations are small enough that they really do want the help because they don't have extensive staffs. So we're excited about the ways in which students have done work, are doing work, and are showing us the potential. And there's another example I've given you of a potential project that is, again, started by students over a summer period, the mindfulness booklet, that is also now becoming a project that is being built upon to create curriculum and other work by other students who do good in the community. So I encourage you, if you haven't already and your students haven't already contacted us, to have them contact us if we can be helpful in any way, either plugging them into a program or supporting them in their learning journey to do more good work in the community, learning by doing. Thanks.
Thanks, Paula. So welcome. It's really great to see people and have people back on campus. We missed you, and we're excited to see you and be here today. I'm Lisa Melendy, the Director of Athletics, and we are the department that oversees, or every student comes through our department at some point. We have a physical education requirement. Much like Paula, people do things both curricularly as part of their classroom experience, which are physical education classes, which are offerings from very traditional sports to outing club, dance. There are all kinds of activities that students can engage in. And our faculty, especially over the pandemic, again, came up with a lot of new creative teaching ideas and ways to deliver that program, again, remotely when students were isolating in their rooms last year when they came on campus. So again, a lot of innovation taking place to reach students where they are. And what we've really learned, we knew this before, but even more so after our experience last year, how important physical movement is to mental health and well-being and to intellectual engagement and staying connected to each other. So it really emphasized for us the joy that students found being together and practicing and in physical movement. And it was just one of the highlights, I know, for the students who were on campus last year. In the fall, we were able to practice. We weren't competing, but we were able to practice together and, again, get out of their rooms and move together. And it was really a great thing. And, again, last spring, we got to some competition, and we're back to fairly normal activity now. We have 32 varsity teams at Williams College. About 750 athletes or students are athletes in the intercollegiate program. So, again, very, very active. I wanted to say, too, that what we focus on, people often sort of wonder about Williams' level of excellence. We have been fortunate to have a lot of success athletically, but really what we're focusing on, again, is the athletic teams and PE classes as an extension of the classroom, right? What are the learning lessons? We're learning to do things together. We're learning to set goals and teamwork, and really, in large part, to deal with failure, which a lot of students at Williams are not familiar with. They've been highly successful through their high school career. The athletic field always teaches you humility because you never win them all, as they say, and how to do that gracefully and how to keep moving and how to set new goals. And in particular, how to have goals that are outside of the outcomes, that are about process and having students understand to live in the moment and to enjoy that and not be focused on what the scoreboard is at the end, but rather, again, their enjoyment of the relationships they build in their time together. The other work that we're really focused on in our department, again, because we touch so many students' lives, it's really important. I would just say, too, one of the beautiful things is I work with all of these offices on campus, just as we try to have our students engaged across all of these opportunities on campus. So we have a student-athlete organization, student-athlete advisory committee that is doing volunteer work and doing community activities on campus. The Geisha Seabolin chapter of SAC, which is a student of color athlete organization who has become more and more active, also trying to think about social justice in terms of what they can do in the community and also how they impact their teams and their team experiences. And so that we're really trying to talk about that and learn more and think more about what the experience for our students of color are on our teams. Newly formed AAA Asian American athletes group also formed just this past year, again, understanding and affinity groups to support each other and share concerns that they might have about their experiences. And I had one last thing that we were doing. Oh, no. Lastly, the other work we're doing, obviously, we're doing a lot of work in supporting the student committee, supporting mental health issues for students, again, across campus, trying to really normalize seeking of help, being able to talk about it more freely and understand, again, where students are and being able to support each other through moments of stress and anxiety and connect them to services on campus, but also just, again, remembering that being involved athletically and physically really supports their mental health. And so we try to have those. Again, you were talking about I don't know if your mindfulness notebook is connected to ours, but really, again, talking about having moments of mindfulness in our physical education classes, in our athletic settings, and teaching students to sort of self-regulate and get back on track and take a deep breath when they come down to practice and transition from space to space. So a lot of work going on besides just X's and O's and training students to win games. We're really, again, focused on how does what they're doing in practice connect to what they're doing in the classroom. What are the skills that they learn in the classroom that are going to transfer to the competitive arena? And what are the skills they're learning in athletics that can transfer back to the classroom? Students learn in all kinds of different ways, and the aha moments happen in surprising places, but those transfer to other areas of their lives and other areas of learning. So that's really the focus of our program. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Corey. I'm the Associate Director at the Davis Center for Inclusive Learning Environments. I guess before I get started explaining kind of what the Davis Center is and does, I want to read the Williams's recently adopted institutional land acknowledgement. So we respectfully acknowledge that Williams College stands on the ancestral homelands of the Stockbridge Munsee Mohicans, who are the indigenous peoples of the region now called Williamstown. Following tremendous hardship after being forced from their valued homelands, they continued as a sovereign tribal nation in Wisconsin, which is where they reside today. We pay honor and respect to their ancestors, past and present, as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. So I like to keep that in mind always on this land. Again, I work at the Davis Center, and the Davis Center is kind of like a multicultural center plus here. Our motto is lead, educate, support. We are the office and the folks here who lead conversations about complex issues of identity and power. We do that in a variety of different ways, both kind of internally with working with the senior staff and the leadership of the college, and also liaising a lot with students and faculty and other staff. We do a fair amount of education work through workshops and trainings on how to build more inclusive environments. And in that work, we also employ a number of community engagement fellows, student workers who do a substantial amount of this work and really learn and practice their leadership skills as leaders on difficult issues that may arise both in the classroom and routinely outside of the classroom. And then additionally, we support classes, clubs, offices across campus, and we also receive support from other offices across campus in our programming. We are the core support staff for our 22 MINCO groups, which is the Minority Coalition. These are student-run groups, and that are fairly autonomous, usually organized around identity affinities. And so we are the office that supports those groups most directly in their programming, and also in them developing leadership. Again, one of the core things that we see really being important about the various student groups we support is trying to cultivate a sense of social justice and leadership together, working on team dynamics. How do you organize and effectively run a relatively large organization with people in it who have a variety of different interests and hold many different identities and come from many different kinds of places, even as they may share some aspects of themselves. And we also do a fair amount of programming. So we run a social change film series, which we partner with Images Cinema on, and we try to bring together classes with the community, with community members and students to host talkbacks on those films. We host lunch and learns where faculty, staff, and or students might present some of the work that they're doing on issues of social justice. And we host dialogues to discuss difficult issues. We just recently had one on critical race theory and its history, for instance, as that's a topic that's been really important recently in American politics. And I'll conclude by saying we have 4 staff members, and most of our programming right now is finally back in person. It is wonderful to be meeting with students in person, to be hosting events, having dialogues in person, and it's wonderful to have you all here on this land. Thank you.
Thanks, Allie. I'd just like to echo that. It's so wonderful to have you all here and to begin meeting with students again in person. It's just really great and refreshing. Again, I'm Kris Hoey. I work in the Office of Campus Life. I'm an assistant director for student organizations and club sports. So I'll tell you a little bit about those. We have about 151 student organizations this year. Sometimes we have a few more. I think coming out of the pandemic, some of those organizations fell off a little bit, but we are seeing a few organizations form this year. We've had 15 so far, new organizations form, which is exciting. Some of those 151 organizations have already been talked about here from my colleagues on the stage. But we do have 16 club sports. That also includes 8 a cappella groups. We have quite a few dance groups, many religious organizations. We have quite a few groups working in activism. And then we also have groups that are just really made for fun. Some of those include, we have a fishing club. We have a group called Get Baked. They often make nice treats for the campus. And another one of those, newly formed this year, is Williams Round Net Association. So part of my role is to approve some of these new organizations as well. Myself, someone from our legal team, and a student are on a committee, and we kind of review the materials that students submit. And, our goal is to help these students form these organizations safely and effectively, checking to see, are there other organizations that are similar? Could they combine? But our goal is to really, help students form, the organizations that they're interested in making. So, we're reading through the materials for this Round Net Association. And by the way, does anybody know what that is, Round Net? It's spike ball. I didn't know either. So we're reading through the materials, and we see advisor Maud Mandel. So, our students very affectionately like to include Maud in a lot of things. Include her. So, I'm thinking, dear Maud, did the Spike Ball Association ask you to be their advisor? Okay. Anyway, I seem to find out that the students actually played Spike Ball with her son this summer, and so she is the advisor to the Round Net Association, which is great. So, among some of the other organizations and some of the other things that I do on campus, in reviewing some of these organizations that are trying to form, we've definitely come across quite a few that are memorable. One that is most certainly sticking out is chess boxing. Anybody heard of chess boxing? This organization or club that was trying to form is really what it sounds like. Chess and boxing. You play a round of chess, a 9-minute round of chess, or not a round, but a 9-minute period of chess, and then you have a round of boxing. And it goes back and forth, alternating, until there is a checkmate or a knockout. This organization was kind of on the docket late 2019, early 2020. So when we needed to leave campus, it kind of fell off. So I'm still waiting for it to come back around. We'll see. But yes, your students are very bright, very interesting, just excited about a lot of things. So fun things come my way to check out and help them to form these organizations. So encourage them to follow through. Let's see what else. How do students work with their organization? They're going to need funding, right? So there's a new student government on campus. It's pretty new. It's in the last 2 years, and the funding arm of that student government is called FAST. And our student groups go to FAST and request funding for different events. Maybe it's speakers, maybe it's snacks, maybe it's just a meeting, and they're trying to get materials for their meeting. FAST funds all these kinds of things. And our students have a good relationship with FAST right now, and they're very, very encouraged by the openness that FAST is providing. And yeah, so it's a very good thing happening on campus right now with student organizations. I think now we might be open for questions.
Mm-hmm.
We are open for questions, and we're taking them in several different ways, or at least 2 different ways. If you have a question and you're here, either of those microphones in the center aisle are the place to go to pose them. We're also taking questions over email at families@williams.edu for folks that are watching us on the live stream. Again, that's families@williams.edu. And I have a couple of questions for the panel to start. Also, I'd like to thank Ali Corey for reading the land acknowledgement and helping us develop good community habits on that front. Let's see. Paula Consolini. How does CLIA go about training students to do the work that they do in the community? And I'm assuming that the training happens in a number of different ways, but could you talk a little bit about how you get folks geared up to do that work?
Sure, happy to do so. Well, we use program-specific training by and large, so that when a student, the example I'll give you comes from our education programming. We have education programming at 2 levels, elementary outreach and high school outreach. And students who participate in that program, or those programs, whether as volunteers or paid, participate in extensive orientation. So the orientations involve meeting with the leadership of the relevant school, a presentation around some of the issues that students need to know about in that particular school. There are guidelines, there are rules of engagement that we provide them, and we also provide professional development, so that particularly in the education realm in the spring term, when there are breaks that don't coincide between Williams and the local schools, we have, during the periods when the schools are not in session, but we are in session, we run professional development. One period of that professional development is organized and run by staff and specialists that are brought in, and the other period after the first one is organized by student leaders, who then help determine what questions the students have in order to do a better job in the work that they're doing. So in other areas, there's any other programmatic work they're doing, let's say volunteer income tax assistance, there's actually a winter study course where they get fully trained and certified as IRS preparers, and then we train them in terms of the work they will do with the community organization. So we run training for the most part in the programs that we run, and we have partnership training, and in some cases connecting students to specialty training that's relevant to the work that they would do if they're working directly with a community organization. So we're very mindful of that and the importance of making sure that students are prepared to go out in the community, because the community is not exactly Williams. They have different issues, different challenges. It's important for them to appreciate that, to listen carefully and to understand, as others have referred, the complex organization dynamics they need to be aware of in order to do an effective job. Thanks.
Lisa, I'm thinking that of all the panelists today, you're the one that has the program that was simply impossible to do remote. Can't do something that you need to be absolutely physically present for over a computer. And so I think my question is, now that we're back in the game, as it were, are there any takeaways from that period when none of this could happen that carry over into the reemergence of Williams athletics as we're used to thinking of it?
Yeah, as you know, that's hard. It's hard to do that, to practice remotely. As I said, we did some other kinds of programming for students to direct programs that they could do, much as now you see, and for sale, lots of places on online programming, workout apps and programming. So we developed some of those things for our own students. But in terms of teams, what really happened was our coaches, I think, learned a lot because they had to, initially we practiced 6 and 12 feet apart. We remained distanced. We had to reimagine how you would practice a sport which normally has contact and now doesn't. So our coaches learned a lot because they had to think deeply and break their sport down again and re-engage with it. So I think the lessons they really learned were about new ways to teach, new ways to coach, new ways to involve your students, and then sort of the margins are things that you might have done in-person meetings for, film review, learning how to do that remotely, for instance, rather than needing a student to come to where you are. So those create some efficiencies. One of the things that we engage in a lot, this isn't, again, not directly to your question, but that Williams students are really busy. Look at beyond their coursework, which is overwhelmingly stressful and time-consuming, all these other great things that they want to be involved with on campus. Efficiency is critical to them. They want the content, they want to learn, they want to get as much as they can. They're only 24 hours in a day. So we learned a lot of efficiencies, I think, about how to deliver content in a more compact time frame. And again, what could we do without them needing to leave their dorm room, much as I said, perhaps breaking down film or having a meeting or building team culture. And I would say the other thing that is probably the biggest takeaway was the last thing I mentioned, building team culture. When we couldn't compete or we couldn't be together, or some students were off campus, learning how to connect with each other, strengthen our relationships, remembering that is really the things that draw people to athletics are the love of movement. It's for some people the competitive drive, but mostly it's their teammates, and building those connections when it's harder to do and when they're even more important. I really think we came back to this with a renewed sense of how important the people were and how to build connections with them in a deeper, more meaningful way. And much of what Ali was just talking about when he talked about the student groups, trying to build team, learning about each other's identities, valuing each other's differences, and you have a common interest in sport, but you all bring a different identity and different sets of beliefs and values, and how to acknowledge those and work through those and cherish those is something we really learned.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm going to dare audience members to step up and ask questions if they have them. And there's a brave soul.
Good morning. I wonder if, Ali, if you could just talk a little bit about how much of the campus does the Davis Center engage, and any kind of information on some of the changes to the building and any of the resources?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. So the first thing I will begin with by saying is I'm relatively new to my position. So I'm currently learning about how, exactly what our reach is and the mechanics of all of our different partnerships. So I don't have a number. I can't give you a quantitative analysis here because qualitatively we engage with I've only been here really since June and being on campus since the beginning of August, and I've interacted with and interfaced with people in athletics, the natural and hard sciences, social sciences, and the humanities, both through in curricular stuff. So we do some trainings of, for instance, TAs who might be teaching and supporting learning in different classes. But then also there are 22 Minco groups right now. And then there are a few more groups that are in the process of being formed, as Kris was saying. And so we interact with all sorts of folks through that and with a lot of staff everywhere. We also host a big block party at the beginning of the fall semester, which brings people together. The Social Change film series gets people both from classes and other folks who are interested in and then we also host the Dively Committee, which is a committee I co-chair for LGBTQ for the LGBTQ community. And so I would say that over the course of the year, we come into contact in some way with a very large number of different people, and, at all different levels and all different relationships to the college. I'm trying to remember, was there a second part to that question? What's that? Oh, yes, the building. Okay, yeah, this is like the most exciting part. So we are in the process of we're about to get started on this massive building project for the Davis Center. The buildings that we are in are old houses and are ripe for an update. And so this project, we expect, I think, it to get started with the building actually early in 2022. Probably take about a year and a half. And we're getting a full upgrade in like all the buildings, so they'll be more accessible to folks with various disabilities, and there will be larger meeting spaces. This is one of the things that we're trying to make sure that we can really accommodate in a new building. There's been a lot of attention to the materials that are used and also the equity practices of contractors and the folks who are doing the work to try to make sure that our ideals are lived in those relationships, and they're not simply just things that we talk about. And so one of the buildings, I think, is getting totally removed, and then a new building will come up there. But then a couple of the buildings which have deep significance to both to the movement that formed the Davis Center. This was a center that was formed through student activism and organizing, and in response to that. So we're making sure that we're retaining aspects of the current building setup to honor that history, while giving those buildings an upgrade to make sure, for instance, that they have elevators and a really functional kitchen, because we are in the middle of the Berkshires, and this is not a place that is particularly known for its huge array of different cultural foods, but they're very food and cooking are very important to many of our students, and so we're making sure that we have a kitchen that's really up to the task. And while that building project is going on, our staff is moving to Bascom House, which is just a little bit on the other side of campus, where we will have accessible offices and also an accessible kitchen that folks can use to make their food. So I hope that gives you a relatively good sense. You can learn more about it. There's also a web page where you can see some images, which will be much better at describing exactly the kind of physical layout than what I've been able to do.
Thanks, Allie. Kris, have you noticed any trends in the types of student groups that are coming forward over the last few years? I'm thinking particularly whether COVID itself may have engendered new ideas for students.
Yeah, one of the things I have noticed is our club sports teams have just really attracted a lot of students, and I think that's partially due to the pandemic, because club sports was able to be outside, and it was something that was organized and happening weekly, and it was just something that, let's get outside, and the mental health aspects that I think we've touched on here are so important. I think students have been just realizing it's important to be outside. It's important to get moving. It's great to have that structure of a team and that kind of network. So I've definitely noticed a lot of that. I've also noticed some different activist groups coming, thinking about some of the things that have happened over the past year, and just students really looking to make a change in what is happening in the world today.
Great. Other questions? Going once? There we go.
Good morning. For those students without their own cars, how do they go about going to and from community activities?
Actually, we have extensive transportation services that are provided to students, certainly through our programs. But the college overall has, the students have the right to ride the buses, the local buses, not that they're very extensive, but they ride the bus for free, just showing their college ID. There's a set of college vans at facilities. We at the Center for Learning and Action have a couple of vans ourselves that are totally dedicated to students going out into the community doing community work. And when we have field work that students have to do out in the community, if they can't drive, we will arrange for a driver or a taxi to take them where they need to go. So the college is committed to making sure that transportation is not a barrier for students to get out in the community and do their work.
Thank you.
I think that's it. With that, I'd like to thank our panelists. Oh, well, we got one more question.
Very quick, I hope. I just wondered what kind of affinity groups there are, how many there are, what the leadership structure is inside the affinity group, if it's led by a teacher or mostly student-led, and just a little bit more about the specifics of the affinity groups.
Sure. I'll speak to that. I think you're talking about what the minority coalition groups. So there are 22 different groups, there's. I'll just speak to the ones that I'm actually the advisor for. So, like, I'm an advisor for the Chinese American Student Organization, for the South Asian Student Association, the Queer Student Union, and those are the kind of core MINCO groups. And then I'm also working with Southwest Asian North African student group that may be trying to put together an application to be an RSO, and Beyond the Binary, which is a group for trans students. Those are both not yet MINCO groups, but they wish to be. The process to become a MINCO group is you have to be a registered RSO, or registered student organization, for 2 years, and then you apply. I mentioned a little bit about how this is somewhat autonomous. There's a what's called the MINCO steering board, which each group has a representative on, and they make some major decisions. They help allocate funding, for instance, to the groups. To individual groups, and they have a constitution. Each group has to have its own constitution that explains, aspects of its structure, and how processes will work within that group. And then also, in terms of the actual, the required structure is each group has to have a faculty or staff advisor, but the groups are run entirely by the students. So as an advisor, my job is to really try to cultivate leadership among the students, make sure that they know what processes are necessary, for instance, to request money, and then help them with whatever leadership stuff comes up, because working together in a team is difficult. Especially when you're trying to put together programming that is going to, serve a wide population, not only within the group, but routinely outside of the group. And so every group has an advisor, but we do not make decisions for that group. We advise and help them strategize when they're looking for funding, suggest partners that they might want to work with. If we see a couple groups trying to do something around the same time, we might suggest, oh, hey, you might want to talk to this other group who's also trying to do something at this point. So for instance, I think next week, the South Asian Student Organization and the Muslim Student Union and the Hindu Student Association are going to work together on an event, because it was of interest to people in those groups, because there's overlap, but there's also interest in building coalition. That aspect of coalition is really important to many of our students. So hopefully that answers it.
Let's give our panelists a warm applause. Really appreciate it.